the first to know. Nsem-Pii TV.
Merimo elbo edi era France. You call France na me call the highest court of the land. Ya omo efreno the court of cassation. It is in Paris. Eho enaye di asem ya involve Vincent Bollore or a French billionaire. Now, a group of non-governmental organization of lawyers from Togo, Guinea, Ghana, the Ivory Coast, and Cameroon, you from Restitution for Africa. Actually, Bollore Group, ya involve Vincent Bollore, onenema, ede akojina court, ewo French abuchimemu for money laundering, bribery and corruption. In the Kwanya, Vincent Bollore first acquired over 22 ports in Africa through bribing African leaders, politicians, and having his way. Now, we have port to name oh my Ghana, you're very interested in this case. And he said, Tema Port, according to court document, has been stated in one of the numerous ports, Vincent Bollore paying the way out through inducing political figures to purchase those ports. Now, about 3 months ago, ena asemno ekopie mu ewo the Paris Court of Cassation. Now, through the lawyers of Vincent Bollore and Nemano, court asked them, say, omo enfile omo defense. Now, his company, Bollore's company, in fact, and some executives of the company sought a settlement through a friend of French guilty plea procedure. And they are some making breaking news from Africa News 24. And Vincent Bollore, the company lawyers, and some executives of the company, echo catch the court to say, per settlement through French guilty plea procedure. But judge near all her case so a name Prempre say was rejected the French guilty plea procedure. Yana Vincent Bollore through his lawyers and some executives executed from the court. Now judge I refuse because according to the judge, the seriousness of the fact presented before him. Yeah, and no, and actually, Kwanya Vincent Bollore first so acquired these sports on to me and granted the guilty plea procedure. Yeah, French for the Yejuma. Hence, Judge Nina shall say there should be a public trial with French financial prosecutors. With French financial prosecutors. Vincent Bollore himself is facing difficulties in getting his case resolved through a plea bargain, and his lawyers have been unsuccessful in efforts to annul the ongoing proceedings. Hence, the court has ruled with French financial prosecutors for a public trial. And today the actually say French court, court of cassation chirimwa. Sa pa na Vincent Bollore and the lawyers so epe. Nanka omaye out of court settlement. Na omatio to escape no. Judge ni chirimwa the seriousness of the fact before him nintino on to me and granted a dear friend French guilty plea procedure, and there should be a public trial of Nipa, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and the deeds I was swore in the selling of our port to him somewhere in 2013, 2014. Now, I am quite the fact of the case as presented by lawyers for Sa Omoko file case, and I'm reading from France 24 in the 17th day of July 2025. Or say, groups from 5 African countries filed fraud and corruption complaint Thursday, accusing French billionaire Vincent Bollore and one of his sons of illegally obtaining and benefiting from port concessions. The collective group is known as Restitution for Africa, and they are accusing the Bollore group, Bollore and his son, of unlawfully receiving the right to run ports and then laundering money in those countries through the sale of its Africa logistics business. This controversy centers on Bollore's group, which held significant operations across Africa, involving 16 key ports, warehouses, and transport hubs. Bollore's controversial involvement in these operations caught the attention of both African activists and French authorities, who have scrutinized the extent of his influence in these corrupt transactions. His African groups behind these recent fraud complaints ensured that his company used their political connections to gain exclusive rights to operate ports in several African countries, including Togo, Guinea, Ghana, the Ivory Coast, and Cameroon. These charges of fraud and corruption and money laundering paint a picture of a vast network of influence peddling, where political favors were allegedly exchanged for lucrative port concessions. In particular, the charges claims that the Bollore group secured key contracts in the African ports of Douala and Kribi, Cameroon, Tema, Ghana, and Abidjan, Ivory Coast, through payment of corrupt monies to high-ranking government officials between the period of 2010 and 2015. The multi-billion-dollar question is, if one in the helms of affairs in 2010 to 2015, it was the NDC. Interestingly, Ghana Diano Koso, according to court document, 2012, 12 to 2015, and son of Vincent Bollore acquired the Tema Port. These deals, according to court document, were facilitated by illegal financial support for presidential campaigns in several of these African countries, including Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana, and the Ivory Coast. Togo's foreign Nsem-Pii and Guinea's Alpha Condé have all confessed in court for receiving financial support from Bollore's group in their various election campaigns. This support was said to be provided through the Bollore group's consulting businesses in these African countries, which allegedly backed these political figures in exchange for port rights. In 2022, Bollore sold his vast African logistics business, including operations in over 20 countries, including Ghana and the rest, to the MSC Shipping Group for 5.7 billion euros, $6.05 billion. This sale raised eyebrows as many questioned the legitimacy of the profits tied to the operations. The African groups behind the fraud complaint argue that this sale was not only a profitable transaction but also a cover-up for money laundering activities. According to the accusations, the profits generated by the Bollore Group African Logistics Arm, which were derived from these allegedly illicitly obtained port concessions, were laundered through the sale of the business. Given the size of the sale and the strategic importance of the ports involved, the accusations have attracted significant attention. At the heart of these accusations are Vincent Bollore, the founder of the Bollore Group, and his son, Cyril Bollore, the younger Bollore, who took over the management of Bollore Africa Logistics in 2019, following his father's retirement. Vincent Bollore is wealthy and his estimated wealth is at $9.9 billion according to Forbes. However, the scale of the allegations has raised questions about the true existence of his wealth and the ethical considerations surrounding his business practices. French investigators who have already been probing the Bollore Group's activities in Africa since 2010, particularly its political ties and the suspicious nature of the port concession agreement, found out that all the sales of these ports are corruption related and a breach of international dealings as according to the United Nations and European Union. The acquisition of ports like Tema, Abidjan, Douala are testament to the fact that top high-ranking government officials were bribed in those concessions. Bollore's actions may have undermined the integrity of the political and economic systems in these African nations, particularly Ghana, the Ivory Coast, Togo, and Guinea. The ongoing legal proceedings in France and Africa are expected to have significant repercussions for both Bollore and his family business's empire. While French authorities, as of now, have already initiated investigations, the new fraud revelations may lead to more comprehensive legal action. The fallout from these investigations and trial could have far-reaching effects on Africa's port industry, which is a crucial part of the continent's infrastructure. The controversial port deals secured by Bollore's company have raised concerns about the role of foreign corporations in Africa's economic development. Critics argue that such practices perpetuate a cycle of corruption and exploitation, where local economies are undermined for the benefit of foreign interests. There may be increased calls for greater transparency and oversight in the management of Africa's ports and logistics industries. The legal battle surrounding Vincent Bollore's port dealings in Africa, especially Ghana, Togo, the Ivory Coast, and Congo, is far from over. The trial highlights the ongoing challenges of corruption, influence peddling, and money laundering in Africa's business environment. The outcome of this case could have a profound impact on corporate accountability in Africa and beyond. African presidents, Foreign Nsem-Pii, Alpha Condé, John Dramani Mahama have all been mentioned in the French court of cassation or cessation. French court of cessation, with dubious dealings as to how Vincent Bollore was able to secure ports in Togo, Guinea, Ghana, and the Ivory Coast. Very, very, very interesting news from France 24. Vincent Bollore, the dear His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the Ghana Kudrunu, and the Ghana's Ejina Kwano, ewo France Abruchimemu, French court, Paris court of cassation. Ni nyina ye hawa, the then John Dramani Mahama, eton Tema Port, edema French investor Vincent Bollore. Said ye beya o memory beya freshened with news ya making kind we from France 24 ko ho ebo. Bi opetchi ni bia no, just Google France 24 ewo ho. Sa nso na wo hwe African News 24 ewo ho. Ohwe Flynn Crime Central was a fraud complaints accused Vincent Bollore of corruption and money laundering in Africa's port dealings. Sa story inso boho. To let me refresh your mind, wo kwanya the then John Dramani Mahama faso eton Tema Port edema Vincent Bollore. Now what the case no asi yi any say the case no esikro. The Africa Confidential magazine just said the deal no Ghana de nyina so on the 13th of November 2014. Bra, in fact, ye release a majority stake of Tema Port edema Vincent Bollore on any MPS port services to operate Tema Port. Ya say sikakra parliament ya agree ye no esu ti se hwim 30 years na ye concession agreement no increase the 35 years 30% na o man yi wo ya na de aka no Bollore no 30% ni hwan ya di by 15%. Owie ye no ye san ma no tax waiver of $873 million. Ti ye no wasem ena akwa mu ewo French court ni. In fact, Vincent Bollore through the lawyers na omo esiki for out of court settlement. Omo efreno the French guilty plea procedure. Yeah, the judge are rejected because of the seriousness of the fact presented before him. Yeah, uchirimu a there should be a public trial of Vincent Bollore and the Bollore group on the acquisition of some 16 ports in Africa. Yeah, the demutintimai Ghana, Togo, the Ivory Coast, Guinea, Congo, and the rest of the African continent. We will keep you updated on this court issue because the country is involved. The person said was the Tema Port legitimately released to Vincent Bollore in 2014 by the then President John Dramani Mahama for the said amount and for the said concessional period of years. And now, and as I said it here, the French court will actually decide the fate of the agreement where say Tema Port is released. The higher stake of the Tema Port is released to a foreigner.